Hi guys, welcome back. We have seen in the past few weeks we have done a lot of work on the Python fundamentals. I've made a series on that. I made a series on pandas fundamentals. Now let's take a look on how we put it practically into use. If you want to revise, I will leave a link to the playlist on Python and my pandas series. You can follow along before you delve into this, or if you are quite familiar with the concepts, you can directly follow along in this video as well. As we saw in the last video, we talked about for exploratory data analysis phase, the 6 key elements are how you can discover your data, how you can structure them, how you can augment them, validate, clean the data, and then present your data, right? So these are around the 6 main elements. I'll leave a link to the video for that as well. So let's take a look with a small data set. I've created a very small data set instead of using a ready-made data set, just to show the power of these 6 elements that you can use in your exploratory data analysis phase. And once you learn this concept, you can apply this to any large data set, no matter how many fields or how many columns. So let's take a look on the small data set. It's a dictionary object I've created. It has the transaction ID, the transaction date, and the transaction amount. So let's convert this into a pandas data frame. So I'm going to import the necessary libraries. I will leave a link to my previous video so you can revise, or else you can directly follow along here. So let's dive right into it. Import pandas as PD. And yes guys, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for the latest of data analysis in pandas and Python and Excel. So I imported the pandas library. Now let's see what else we're going to need for visualization. We'll use matplotlib.pyplot as plt. Okay, I think these two should be enough for now. If you have not installed them, then do install them using the pip install command. I have also made a video on how you can use the Jupyter Notebook environments and the Conda environments to have different segregated environments. So do follow along with that as well. Alright, so these libraries have been installed. Now let's take a look. Let us create a data frame object. So what we're going to use, we're going to use the data frame class. Okay, and inside this I'm going to pass the arguments as data equal to data. I'm going to pass this data variable. Okay, so we're going to revise all our pandas concepts in this video and also see the 6 elements of the exploratory data analysis phase. Now we're going to do the discover element. Okay, so it has loaded. Let's see. Let's discover this data. So I'm going to use df.head and discover the data and see what it has. Okay, you can see they show me it has 3 columns: transaction ID, transaction date, and transaction amount, and these are the first 5 rows. Now let's take a look to get more information on this data set. So you can see it has shown me it has 3 columns, 10 values, and 1 is integer and other 2 are objects, right? This should be date time, so we'll see how to get around that. And this should be numeric because this is the transaction amount, but it is showing in text. So we'll see, once you learned about the data, you know that this is supposed to be date time and this is supposed to be, like numeric, the transaction amount, how you can do your data wrangling task and your cleaning task on the data. So let's take a look. Let's dive more into the data. Let's see what are the size. So you can see there are 30 values, and let's do df.shape. Okay, you can see there are 10 rows and 3 columns. So that's hence we have 30 values. Okay, so now the first thing we want to do is, in this data, we want to create this transaction date into a datetime object, because with a datetime object you can do a lot of data manipulation, you can do a lot of grouping, you can do a lot of time series attributes for this data set. You don't want this to be an object, but you want this to be a datetime object. So let's see how to do that. So you remember our pandas concept. You can directly edit an entire column by giving the column name. So I'm going to give the transaction date, and here what we're going to do is we're going to call the pd.toDatetime function. Okay, the toDatetime method. All right, and here we're going to pass this entire column. Okay, there's the series object, transaction underscore date. Okay, and let us run this. And now after it runs, let's take a look. Okay, it is giving me some error. What is this error? Okay, so I need to pass the format, because it needs to know whether this is an mmdd by ddmm or what. So I'm going to pass the format. So let's do that. Format is equal to, so this is %m for month separated by percentage. Oh, so I'm going to have, sorry, D first, it's day, then separated by month, then separated by year. Let's run this. Now it has run. Let's take a look at the info again, and now you can see transaction date is of type date time. So we have successfully converted this into type date time. Let's take a look again at the data set. You can see this is now a date time. Now I want to do, you can see transaction amount is in dollars and billion. So this is, on this day the revenue earned or the transaction were around 1 billion. On this day 2 billion US dollars. This is 4 billion. But for doing any data operations, this has to be a numerical field, right? If I want to do something like any statistical operation, sum, standard deviation, mean, there has to be a numerical field. Right now this is an object. I cannot do any mathematical or statistical computation on this data. So let's take a look how we can convert this into a numeric field. Again, we have discovered the data now. Now we are going to see how we can clean this or do some data wrangling tasks to make this data more usable. So you can see how we are going to use all these 6 steps. We're going to then see how the data, if we need to augment, and then how we can make the data more usable to give the presentation views, to tell a story of your data. And that is the main task of any data analyst, to tell a story from the data so people can take proper actions. So let's see how to do that. Again, let us give the transaction amount column. Same, we have covered all these concepts. Okay, so you can revise them in my previous pandas and Python series in case you have either forgotten, or else you can just follow along here. So let's see this, how we're going to do this. We're going to do so let's call this transaction amount. Okay. Amount, and .str, we access the string object, and what we'll do is okay, let's do replace, and we want to remove this $sign. So let us replace this $sign with a blank quote. Okay, and let us hit enter and see. And now let us call the data set, and you can see the dollar is gone. So now let's do the next part. I'll copy this again. Let's replace this B, which stands for billion, into just a code. Okay, and now we can see, let's see the df.info. Okay, it is still an object. We need to convert this into an integer. So now let us do this. Let's copy this again. Let's copy this again. Okay, and now we do as type. Okay, we're going to change the type. Okay, as type, and then let's give int here. So now let's see this, and now let's see df.info. Okay, and you can see this is of type integer. Okay, so let's run df.head now and see the first 5 rows, and now you can see that the transaction amount is an integer. It's a numeric value, and we have transaction date. Now let us do some date operations. Because we have made the transaction date into a date field, we can do some date operations. Let us extract the month and the year. That will help us create better visualizations. Okay, so let's see. Let us do df. Now the same way as we have seen in our pandas concepts, to add a new column, you can just mention the column name, transaction month. I want to have transaction month, so I can do, now I just access the column transaction date. It's a date time column now, so I will get the .date object, so I can do .dt, and then let's just say month. Okay, and let's run this. Okay, now let's see if it has added the month. Okay, you can see the transaction month, first is January, second is February, accordingly. Let's also add the year, so you can filter for in the future. Okay, right now it's only of 2002, so it's fine. So but let's see again, df.head. Okay, so you can see, oh, I've done this for transaction months. Okay, sorry, let's run this again and add a new column here, transaction year. And now let us run the df.head. Okay, so now we have 2 columns, transaction month and transaction year. So you can automatically filter, you can show the reports by either year or month, and you can do the grouping accordingly. And now from this data set, we have seen that the transaction year is 2020. So for each month, let us group by month and see how much is the maximum revenue earned, or the transaction maximum transactions for each month. Okay, so what is the sum of all the transactions for each month? So they will get to know that which month has given the maximum revenue. So how to do this? So let's say grouped transaction trans month. Okay, now let's do this. Okay, so now how we are going to do this? So df, let us do double brackets because we want a data frame. So I'm going to do transaction month and transaction amount. Okay, I'm going to take these two columns, transaction amount. Okay, I'm going to say dot group by. Okay, group by, and then what we're going to do, okay, the columns we want to group by, I want to group by month. Okay, because I know it's the same year. If it is different years, then I would filter by each year and then done the grouping accordingly. So I'll say transaction month, and let's do dot sum. Okay, and let's hit enter. Okay, now let us run this, and you can see that for the transaction month for for January it is 7 billion worth transactions, for Feb 5, and for March 12. So let's plot this accordingly to get a better view. Okay, so let us do this. Okay, how to plot? I have loaded matplotlib earlier, so I'll say plt dot, let's try a bar graph. Okay, x is the x-axis. What I want to do is I want to pass the month, so I'm going to do this group dot index will give me the months basically, and height is the y-axis. Okay, so y-axis I want to pass the transaction amount, so let's do grouped. Okay, and let's pass the transaction amount column, transaction amount column. Okay, let's create a label, revenue per month. Okay, and let's do now plot dot x label. That's what the label for the x-axis, and let's say months, and let us do plt dot y label. Okay, y label, let's see y label, and that's going to be the amounts. Okay, amount, and okay, and let's do plt dot show. Let us run this. Let's do plt dot legend also to show the legend. Let's do, okay, let us show. Okay, it's running now. Yeah, and this works fine. So you can see revenue by month, and you can see in the month of March we have earned the highest revenue, and the month of April it has been the lowest revenue. But let us analyze this further to see is this the right picture or not. So let's see which month has the maximum transaction. So let us copy this again. Okay, so it will save us time from writing it again. Group, you can say max, group underscore max trans per month, and then instead of let's do the max instead of doing the sum. Okay, and let's run this. So we can see March is the month which has the highest transaction. So one transaction is worth of 7 billion in the month of March itself. So let us plot this again. Okay, let us copy this to save time. The same thing, copy this. Only thing I'll change this to underscore max and underscore max, because I want to use the other data frame. Okay, and this should work fine. So you can see here it is shown that in the month of March, that is I am having the highest transaction. So it's not surprisingly that this month only is having the maximum revenue, because there's only one transaction which is of 7 billion. So coming to an analysis that the month of March was like very good may not be very accurate, because there we can see that we have only one transaction worth 7 billion which is increasing the revenue in this month. We can confirm this further by doing analysis on the numerical fields. Which is the numerical field? The transaction amount. So let us call the data frame again and say transaction amount, okay. And if you remember, we use the describe function to do your statistical analysis. Let us call that, okay. And let us see. So we can see now it shows the count 10 records. The mean is 2.7, standard deviation is 1.76. that means around 65% to 75% of the data will lie in plus minus 1.76 of the mean. Then the bin, you can see the 25th percent and the second quartile, the first and the second quartile are the same value, and then there's one maximum record of 7. So let us do this by a box plot and see if there's any anomalous behavior in the data. So we can say plt dot box plot, okay, and let us pass this entire data frame, okay. So df, and let's pass the series transaction amount. We want to analyze only this series transaction amount, only one column. Okay, let's see if there's, what does the box plot tell us? Okay, so you can see in the box plot it shows the minimum value, the lower whisker, the higher whisker, and you can see there's one outlier. That means there's one transaction which is at 7 billion. This is the outlier, and this box plot seems pretty normal, although you can see the median and the first quartile are coinciding. Okay, so let's do a histogram to understand this better. So let's see plt dot hist, and it'll give us more insight on this data. You can see it's such a small data set, only 3 columns and 10 rows, how much analysis we can do. So you can apply these principles to any other large data set, but it's important to understand the principles. So let's pass again and transaction amount, okay, and let us see this, and let's do the bins. Bins is the intervals, okay. I want 5 bins, okay, and let's run this, and you can see my histogram shows me that between 1 to 2 billion there are 6 transactions. So most transactions are between 1 to 2 billion. Between around 2.2 to around 3.3 or 3.4 billion there are around 2 transactions, and then there's only one transaction from around 5.8 to 7 billion. You can see that is actually this one, that for 7 billion there's only one transaction. You can see this one transaction of 7 billion is an anomaly, it's an outlier. Rest all the transactions, most of the transactions form between 1 to 2 billion. So you can see from this data is that this anomalous transaction is contributing to the increased revenue in the month of March. So assuming that month of March is the highest revenue and will always be, it is a wrong conclusion, because we had one anomalous transaction and the general trend is around 4 to 3 billion. So that is the way we can use to predict the data and tell what is the general trend of this data, and this is an anomalous behavior in this month. But you can see with such a small data set with 10 rows and 3 columns, how you can apply the EDA phase to do discovery, cleaning your data, structuring your data, organizing it, validating and presenting it, right? So this is how we covered the 6 concepts that we talked in the previous video in a real example. Now if you want me to make more videos on this in detail, I'll do this with a larger data set as well, so you can follow along. Please do follow along my other videos and playlists in the series. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a like on this video and a comment, and stay tuned for the latest of data analysis in Python, Pandas and Excel. Thank you.